Another beautiful day, another beautiful week of Academy action here in the summer of 2021. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mark Alexander Adamile. I'm joined here by the only man who still likes to bring sweater vests into the fashion days of the 20s and the millennials here, but he's actually changed up his outfit. He's now got a bomber jacket and a shirt, so, you know, he's matching up with the drip now.
I mean, I got to try my best to keep up with you, Rafa, as you got the leather jacket as well today. And excited to look good for these good-looking games we're about to have on Academy.
Absolutely.
As we've got 3 good ones coming up today as these teams getting later in the season, the posturing for that top 6 to make Academy playoffs and dodge out on that Tier 1 Proving Grounds event. Starting to get the race getting a little bit hot. We got some games that are going to really start to solidify some of these teams as we get into the back half of the season.
Yeah, we should pull up the schedule so our lovely viewers at home can see what is on for the first day of, I believe we are on week 7 now, as week 9 is the last week. So, as you said, Cubby, 2 weeks left. You know, including this week, 3 weeks left. We have Dignitas and TSM on the main channel, followed by Team Liquid, Cloud9, and then Golden Guardians and FlyQuest. And make sure you are going over to check out the other stream over on Nerd Street LOL, where you'll see our friends Mazel and Rebel Fox casting the other 2 series.
Yeah, today they have Immortals Academy versus COG Academy to boot things off, followed up by EG versus 100 Thieves as well. 2 teams that have a lot of talent on both those Academy rosters, not to mention their semi-pro rosters too in those 2 orgs. We got to get focused up on the game that we have in front of us. It's Dignitas versus TSM, the 9th place team versus the 7th place team. But I know, Mark, you were talking about how you feel like TSM with TakeOver stronger than what they are sitting in the standings right now.
Dude, I mean, when TakeOver's in the roster, it is a completely different squad for TSM. TakeOver literally stays true to his name. He takes over games. And the only times where I want to bring up a stat from Smacks. There was at one point before we. Oh, you got it? All right.
I got it.
Lay down
TSM,
the law for me.
With TakeOver, they are 7-5, and with Sword, they're 3-9. So, yes, that's slightly results-based analysis, but they do look significantly better with TakeOver, who I would say is holding his own a little bit more in the mid lane compared to where Sword was at. As Sword is bringing up the rear in terms of laning stats. TakeOver, middle of the pack, and also the damage. He is pretty much playing melee assassins, breaking out the Akali, breaking out the Yone, some Silas as well. And on those champions, TakeOver, very clean mechanically, has had some very impressive moments throughout the team fights, and we want to see more of that from him, and will today as he is getting the start.
And this TSM roster as a whole, with the addition of Hyper and TakeOver into the squad, it's a completely different, revitalized look than their split during the spring of earlier this year when they had Babip and Sword playing a majority of their games. Not to take anything away from those players individually, but it just didn't seem like as a successful fit. With these 2 players, they elevate each other to the point where TakeOver, he has the lane priority to be able to get out of lane and then give Hyper those advantages that he wants to push for. Because coming from the collegiate and the semi-pro scene, Hyper has always been this jungler who just wants to get into the face of the aggression.
And that's actually something I talked with Hyper about before these games today, kind of caught up with him, and I was like, what was that transition from collegiate to academy, right? Because Hyper is someone that has played in the semi-pro circuit, but most recently was on Illinois State, roster that made it to top 8 even without Hyper on the roster, thanks to some impressive play from their mid laner Dridozer. So a very good collegiate roster. Hyper, of course, ended up getting picked up by TSM, which is awesome. And I was like, what's the jump? And he said, collegiate was hard because they had to do classes, but academy, I just get to play and I like that better. So that's kind of where Hyper's head at, right? He just wants to grind out league, keep on getting better, and something that he has improved at and mentioned when I talked to them beforehand, it's being more disciplined. One of the big parts about academy, because as you mentioned, this guy on Lee Sin, freakish mechanically, that's why he was picked up by TSM, but having that discipline at higher level games is very important because your mistakes, they get exposed, they get punished, and Hyper has been adapting to that. I'd say that he still is one of the weaker junglers that we have, but of course one of the fresher faces that we have in a very strong jungle talent pool, and he started to make some of the strides to really improve his own play, and we've seen that improve TSM's play as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you say discipline, I think the first step was having to let the Lee Sin pick go to his solo laners because Hanser and Takeover,
He's still
especially
2-0 on the
Takeover,
pick.
yeah. Still, obviously, you know, there are times when Hyper would like to take the Lee Sin for himself, but as a solo lane, Lee Sin has been dwindling in play and just going over to the jungle. Maybe we'll see that from him. But you talk about fresh faces in the jungle role. We have to look on the other side of the coin here because we got Dignitas Academy, 16-year-old in Will, who you may have seen under other accounts.
Player emotional. No invade, please.
No invade, please is the one that
I like that one
usually
the best. Yeah,
yeah.
That's very true in terms of the jungle. But yeah, I didn't catch up with Will, but I know that last week I talked with Invert a lot, and they're really trying to incorporate a play that's trying to revolve around Will, make the young jungler feel comfortable in the academy scene. And in order to do that, I actually caught up with Soligo before these games. And so Soligo, he said, working with Will, it's been really interesting because it's reminiscent of when he first got to work with Kenvi, when Kenvi stepped up last year, which high praise if you're being compared to Kenvi right off the bat from Soligo. He said he's just a really talented solo queue player that still has solo queue habits. So working with Will to try and break those, he called it an innocent passion for the game. And so I really like that. The fact that Soligo's been, you know, he's the more experienced member now. He's been helping Will step up. And I think that Dignitas, the record doesn't really show the improvements they've been making, but a split series with Golden Guardians, who we'll see later today, who have been somewhat hot. A split series with an improved CLG last week, who are starting to play a little bit better. Starting to take some of those strides. We've seen some nice moments from Will where he utilizes pocket picks or has just a really solid game on the Xin Zhao. We see why he was picked up by Dignitas and that he has potential to make a big impact in Academy.
Yeah, apart from Brox and LCS, I think Will's the only jungler in all of North America for LCS and Academy that still plays Rek'Sai.
It went a lot better than the LCS one, too.
Well, you know, that's...
Had to bring it up. Yeah.
Hey, man, I think they're getting enough things going on right now. But for Dignitas Academy, Will, on the Rek'Sai, has pulled out the Prowler's Claw and more full damage lethality builds. I know one of our colleagues, Max, thinks Rek'Sai is one of the more useless junglers, but when it comes to comfort, and I think, you know, is something that's super important that you had your conversation in Invert, is that is the best thing for allocating or accommodating fresh talent into an academy roster. You're just putting the expectations on the rest of the members who have had experience, like Lorlo, probably one of the more longer standing members, JJ as well, who has stepped up his play and being more of a leader for this team because you have to make sure that, you know, when you have rookies in your lineup, that they're able to play without fear and they're able to just play the game as they normally would in solo queue, because transitioning from that environment in history has always been a difficult transition.
And especially at the roles jungle and support, I think those are the two roles where you have to take the biggest strides competitively. And it's really difficult to go from jungling in solo queue where, you know, the 2-3 camp invades just mindlessly to try and beat people with your hands. And that gets punished at this level where you aren't going to beat people with your hands as much, and also you have teams that are going to play around that. So I think adapting, it's been a struggle for Will. I know that Will and Hyper, respectively, they're the two junglers that have the lowest goal diff at 10 in the league. So I think some of the greener faces has shown, but also a good opportunity for both of them going up against each other to take that step up, try and get those leads and play the map well early, as they are two of the greener faces that we have in Academy. But two players that we're really excited to see how they develop as they start off their careers here.
Yeah, and I think, you know, when we go to looking at this jungle and mid lane 2v2 matchup, this is where a lot of the action and a lot of the game state is going to depend on revolving around. Because when we look at TSM's historical wins, it has been off of the back of Takeover and Hyper no pun intended, taking over the game. Whereas you look at Dignitas Academy in a recent stride, it is, you know, Will getting a comfort pick or Will being able to play something that does match up to his playstyle. I'm going to see a lot of priority for Xin Zhao, whether it's going to be banned or first picked on blue side for this team, because Xin Zhao in his current state is definitely one of the most powerful junglers in the game right now. There's other junglers that Will has gone to outside of the Rek'Sai, including the Diana and the Kindred, but those two do have a little bit of their flaws and don't match up to the raw power and utility that Xin Zhao is in with his current state.
Yeah, we aren't seeing a lot of people trade Diana and Xin Zhao. It feels like because Xin does win that matchup early, they feel like Diana is more on the famine side of Feast and Famine, as that pick is. I think Dig, though, specifically in their wins, have the big difference has been Saligo. I mean, Saligo, some of the games that Dignitas has won has just been off the back of this guy's play. Still one of the better mid-laners that we have here in Academy. And also, I think for TSM, it's been Cody-san and Yurson. That bot lane that as Yurson has started to develop a little bit more, they've been playing really well in the 2v2. I know that Cody-san, behind Luger and Sven in gold diff at 10 in his own role, he's actually been somewhat main dominant with Yurson here in Academy, and I want to see if that could be the big difference for TSM going into this matchup, if they really focus some time and energy into making sure Cody-san's set up for success. He has been able to take those leads and snowball them into wins when he's able to get ahead, something that he's been able to do throughout his entire career as a player, but it's been good to see him return to that form this split in Academy.
Cody and Yurson, were some of the two players that we were super excited about with TSM during the second half of the spring split, and then going into the Proving Grounds tournament, where they had a decent run. Didn't end up in I don't think the top 6 of the Proving Grounds finishes, but I know when we were looking at TSM Academy's performances starting in Proving Grounds, the first Tier 1 over at Unified Grand Prix, we were a little surprised with Yurson coming in as Fizzy was getting swapped out, and we're thinking, oh man, Fizzy has been trying to help this team come together. He's been one of the keystones for making a lot of TSM Academy's wins come out to fruition. But then Yurson came in. I know we were talking to Immortals Academy coach Jensen, who was like, dude, when Yurson comes in, this guy is going to just rock the Academy scene. And after a couple games to just get adjusted, Yurson has been absolutely incredible as a support.
It took him a little bit of time to develop and get comfortable, is kind of what it seems like in Academy, but now that he has, that 2v2 is very scary for TSM. I know they're a 7th place team in the standing, but that's one of the better 2v2s that we have in Academy for that bot lane, as I know that we're talking a lot. We are getting word from our wonderful production team that we are having some Discord issues with the team, so we're still troubleshooting before we hop in the draft. That does give us more time to tease this matchup, tease the fact that I think it's a good opportunity for both these teams to prove themselves in the standings. And Rafa, that top 6 spot, not only do you get the experience of playing in best of series in the Academy playoffs, but you also guarantee the fact you don't have to go to that Tier 1 Proving Grounds qualifier up against some of those semi-pro teams who are looking pretty good in the season. The seeding for a team like Wildcard Red going into that tournament might get adjusted versus some of these Academy teams, a team that has Arrow, has Bradley, one of the better prospects that we have. In fact, the best prospect that we have in semi-pro. Winston, who is much improved. Brandini's on form. Daption's huge. That top 6 matters, and both these teams at the moment are outside the top 6. So wins here could be very important to try and solidify that spot and prevent having to go to that Tier 1, where there are some scary semi-pro teams we have on the circuit right now.
Yeah, for Dignitas, I'm not going to try to... I'll try to put it as polite as I can. At 9th in the standings, I don't know if they're going to be able to make a push towards that top 6. At this point, I think they just have to get prepared for Unified Grand Prix and being able to make sure that they don't get beaten by some of the scarier semi-pro teams coming into that Tier 1 event. Now, if I remember correctly, Wildcard Red and Cloud9 Amateurs, since they auto-qualified for Proving Grounds in September, they're actually not playing in the Unified Grand Prix.
I'm not exactly sure how that works. They might be playing for seeding.
Okay.
So
I thought they were guaranteed.
The
yeah, I thought they were guaranteed just like 7th and 8th seed right off the get-go. So
possibly.
We'll have to look into that and get.
So they'd be seeded higher than the Academy teams that make the Tier 1. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're still looking into that process. But, of course, Proving Grounds, a little bit of a new format, changed in the summer. And if you have been missing those games, they are on Academy at 6 p.m. Eastern on Monday and Tuesday. So we definitely encourage you to tune into those games. And next week, we'll be making an appearance on there as well. So you'll see some familiar faces from the faces that cover Academy, too. As those semi-pro teams, rather impressive early. But returning to the Academy squads, we were going to save this for draft, Rafa, but early game. It's one of the big focuses that we have because both these teams, 9th and 8th place in early game rating for the early season. TSM, average being down 810 gold at 15 minutes. Dignitas, average being down 839 gold at 15 minutes. And once again, a lot of that's because of green junglers, but also, that means that each team has a good chance to take down the other in the early game, and we want to put our focus there to see if these teams make the right decisions that they've not been making in other Academy matchups.
Hyper, wants to go forward, wants to play aggressive, is always looking to take the favorable skirmishes if his laners have priority. Will obviously wants to do the same thing, so we're expecting a bit of a bloodbath around the crab. Maybe not C9 fiasco levels at MSI, but we'll have to see how tame some of these junglers are, because one of the things that you did talk to Hyper about is that even though he has an aggressive tendency and it has had a history of just playing very having a volatile history in the past, he's been showing a little bit more restraint. He's working on his team play a little bit more, which I'm looking forward to see, because then that would show a huge amount of growth in such a young talent.
It's something that we're expecting. We have high hopes for Hyper. A lot of it, first off, we've heard that Peter Zhang is just an incredible jungle coach behind the scenes. That's been something that has been floating around. And a young player like Hyper, that's someone where, Peter Zhang taking that player, kind of banking off his own skills to try and develop this rather green talent to turn into something that can be one of the better junglers that they have in Academy, and hopefully, of course, promote talent as talent develops in this space. So I think that's one thing, but also the thing that we've seen from Hyper is that there have just been some games where he gets read like a book, and a lot of that greenness shows. I think specifically against Immortals, going up against Anda, the first game of that series that IMC did take for themselves. Anda was just reading Hyper like a book, and on the Viego for Anda, he spent more time as Voldabear on the map than it felt like Hyper did, as Hyper was really pushed around in that jungle matchup. And really struggled, but we've also seen Hyper have some really good moments, specifically on the Rumble, in fact, a champion that he's had a lot of success on.
The other thing that, speaking of, is kind of these, junglers who have had much more experience than the greener talent in the jungle, is that with the jungle changes that we've had recently, there's a lot more flexibility in terms of what paths that you can take, and some of the newer junglers are just kind of falling into the trap of just doing really standard expected clears. So a lot of them, outside of players like Kenvi, who is still quote-unquote on the newer side, even though he's had half of a Academy split under his belt in addition to Spring.
Yeah, he's a year in now.
Yeah, he's a year in now, right? Yeah. But still, when you compare it to junglers like Anda, who have been to LCS, who have been to Worlds back in 2018 for 100 Thieves, and then on the Immortals sub-squad, when they went to 2017 and playing in the solo queue ladder, these players know how to change up their jungle paths and pull out unexpected routes just to throw the enemy off, and they understand how to play without any leashes, which gives less information to the enemy team, whereas a lot of the players like Will and Hyper have usually just kind of done the standard, all right, we're just going to go red Raptors, full clear blues, or we're going to full clear red and then full clear blue side, right? And then a lot of junglers have done that for a while now, and even though that a few patches ago when Jungle XP and Gold was not nerfed at the time, that was the most efficient clear, and of course you were playing Udyr and Hecarim, just uber chem tank every single game. That's no longer the strategy, right? And if you don't adapt your thank goodness, right? If you don't adapt to your pathing on these patches now, you're like you said, it's going to be very predictable on what you want to do in the early game. And then if you're someone like Hyper or Will that relies on getting that early game snowball, then you're going to be up poop creek, as the keeping it family friendly here on the Academy stream.
Yeah, it's definitely something that, I love the fact that you have more routes available. I think one of the most interesting routes I've seen is on blue side. You can go like red to Raptors or Wolves, and then skip blue, but actually do Gromp. And then when you take the Gromp, you do it faster than blue. You get the health and mana back once you kill the Gromp, which gives you more health to get out onto the map. And you're getting out a couple seconds faster than what it would take to do the blue buff. We've seen some junglers do that and hit a top lane timer that other top laners are not expecting. I think that as this path becomes more common and more people learn about it, top laners are starting to respect it, because we've seen it work in LCS games. I think notably last week, not this past week, but 2 weeks ago, Acadian versus TSM. did that path on Xin Zhao. Huni jumped in with the E, and Acadian was actually able to turn it because I think he was up there 5-6 minutes before Huni thought. Used the jump on Gnar, and, well, if you do that in Renekton Xin Zhao, sayonara. You're hit the gray screen. So I want to see more junglers kind of play around with this path. I think the most common thing we've been seeing is dropping Krugs and full clearing, but I like the fact that 3 camps are back, and I think that just having more options for what you do on that first clear, for what your first move is going to be in the jungle, it makes the game more interesting, and it gives a lot more focus on the jungler in the early game, which I think for League, always healthy when you have more options in that role, just compared to the full clear Hecarim Moody, or like, all right, full clear into Crab, base, we play the game from there.
God.
Not
yeah.
nearly as fun to watch.
And it doesn't really offer as much skill expression for junglers to, you know, not necessarily mechanics, but in terms of just, you know, brain power and just being able to understand the map and understanding matchups as well, because you have to really know, you know, making sure you're calming with your top laner or your mid laner, understanding when wave states are happening. A lot of times you see, you know, especially with aggressive junglers like Xin Zhao, or if you go for something like Volibear as well as there we go. you can go for a huge wave crash on the third wave with the cannon, right? And so that can usually set top laners behind. But I'm gonna break us off here, Cubby, because we are experiencing more technical issues from one of the players who's having just a difficulty being able to get their headset to work, and you know, if you can't get communication with their players, so we're going to be taking an extended...
You're talking about top lane, mid lane, jungle comms. I feel like that's pretty important to have.
You know, you would imagine, right? You know,
yeah, maybe.
It's not like Season 4 days where, you know, Starhorn Royal Club were just using, you know, smart pings to get there. Yeah, just getting... It's like, all right, I'm coming right now, you know. There's a little bit more detail and nuance that you got to make sure you're communicating. But we're going to be taking an extended break, folks. You know, appreciate the patience you guys are all having. We'll try to be back as soon as possible when the players are all ready. Hey, guess what? The timer didn't run out. We just got
camera froze.
Yeah, my camera froze, but it's okay. We're now getting into draft, like right now. Yeah, you know what? Wait for it.
Wow.
Bam.
Almost like you called it out.
Yeah, because I'm omni-powerful, man. You know. But you know what?
Well, you know what? We've been, it's been a delay. Fortunately, Will's headset was fixed or replaced, so we're ready to go. We can tie it into draft. And Rafa, guess what? 11.14, we're on a new patch. And the thing that jumps out of the page to me is all of a sudden Mundo was already being flexed between top lane, being support paired with the Senna. Well, guess what? A lot of jungle buffs on this patch really help Mundo. Becomes a much more powerful pick, and I'm curious to see if we see him in the jungle today.
Yeah, for the bans, kind of flying through the gates. We already talked about Xin Zhao being highly contested, and TSM don't even want to take that chance. They're already banning it out in their first pick here. They're still looking for one more ban. The Aurelia is the one that takes the cake here. So things like Viego, just there it is, Cubby.
Yeah, Aurelia also got a lot of changes on this patch and is very powerful. We've seen her being extremely high priority in the pick ban of the semi-pro games that have already been playing on live patch, so good to see Academy catch up and try and adapt some of those, but instantly the Nocturne was left up, of course, did get nerfed, but not Jungle Nocturne, only they Nocturne. So just less healing from the minions on that passive, bit of a change, but still a very powerful pick and something that dominates the tempo of the map when you have that teleport paranoia combo available. So TSM already setting up around bot side with that, the fact you can do that, help out the Kalista. I think Dignitas recognize that, and they go for the Ziggs.
All right, Cubby. Do we see the fabled detonation duo, though, from Dignitas Academy? The pairing Ziggs and Tristana. Not necessarily in the same lane together, but as two separate laners. Usually the Ziggs, you know, normally goes bottom lane, and then with the Thresh, you have a lot of safety. You have all the wave clear that you need to be able to deal with some of the more aggressive lanes like Kalista, Nautilus, and you have the Dark Passage for repositioning. So now, taking a look at these three champions on both sides, Cubby, you know, kind of break down what both teams are looking for in this next round.
Right off the bat, Kalista Nautilus, that says that you want to play towards the bot side, and they had to take the Nautilus there or else it would have gotten banned away, so this does give priority in the support matchup, gives you that point-and-click ability to try and attack the Ziggs, whereas Dignitas need the setup around that Viego. They're saving the triple flex for it. Of course, Ziggs can still be put mid. We've mostly seen it bot, where it's really the strongest. But we're going to have to see how Dignitas round out their composition and where they slot that Viego. And TSM immediately attacking some of the strong side lanes that they could play towards. So a Jace being taken off the table makes a lot of sense, since Ziggs is very self-sufficient in the bottom side. You can just play around mid or top, whatever you want to do.
All right, well, Jace, like you said, already being off the table. Akali is the other kind of powerful solo laner that they don't want to have in TSM's hands. It's a pretty decent blind pick, and because LeBlanc has already been taken off the table as what as many have touted as the better counter pick into Akali. I'm going to have to save a little bit of dark tech for Akali, because there's been a little theory crafting I've done with some other players. Don't worry, Akali, I'll fill you in once Akali is up on the board. But Set, another powerful flex pick.
I am.
And yeah, dude.
Is trying out the builds.
I've been doing some research. Now, this is another flex pick. Lee Sin, we know that the solo lane play has not been as great with nerfs to his E, but still powerful jungler or a solo laner, and just in a certain matchups, as majority of things like Set and Akali have been taken away. Nocturne also is on the side of TSM. So now we're waiting on potentially another solo laner for TSM, and we talked about how important it is to get counterpick priority for this mid lane matchup.
It seems like TSM are saving that. Of course, Nocturne Lee Sin can be fluxed around. Still know who the jungler is. Selfishly, I really want to see Hyper play his Lee Sin. Is 2-0 on the pick. It was what he was known for in the semi-pro and collegiate circuit. But it's tough to play Lee Sin into Volibears. That looks to be the choice of jungler for Will. And now we're going to have to see how they round out the composition. As they're hovering some mid laners here for Soligo. And it looks like it's going to be a Silas. So has access to the Kalista ult, the Nocturne, the Nautilus ult. That's enough for Silas to be locked in. Excited to see most likely Soligo pilot this one in the mid lane.
Yeah, the best Silases also know how to do Lee Sin insects when he takes the Dragon's Rage away. So, because I've seen Abscon Abduct into Kick Flash, which is pretty sick combo. Now, Takeover. Does he want to take the Lee Sin? No, he's going to go for the Rise instead into what looks like potentially the Silas for Soligo in the mid lane.
Matchup.
You already called out that Will more than likely is taking this Volibear. I would definitely advocate for that as well. Even though we've seen Volibear into the top lane, it doesn't give Will the agency he needs in the early game if you were to take the Viego. It's better for skirmishes, better for scaling, but in the solo lane for Lorlo, he's going to have access to economy much faster than you would on jungle econ. And Volibear, you have ways of being able to go press the attack, you can go for early ganks, and because you're going up against a Nocturne, the early ganks are definitely in your favor as well. So right out the get-go, I already see Dignitas Academy, their game plan is to try and go for just getting Will off the ground in the early game.
I think that Will, though, on the Volibear, like, yes, getting off the ground is important, but the way that he gets off the ground is by enabling his laners. And I think that the mid-jungle 2v2 is where I'm looking at, Rafa, just because Rise against Silas, favorable matchup, but it's favorable because of the gank setup, the fact that Silas is melee, that you can have that empowered Rune Prison to try and set up something for the Nocturne. But going up against a Volibear, that makes mid lane a little bit harder because Volibear is always happy to trade his flash for yours, and that'd be a trade where Dignitas Academy trades up. So I'm expecting 3 camp plays early mid to try and get those setups. I think that's good for both teams, and I'm curious to see if a 2v2 breaks out between the mid laners and the junglers. It's definitely something that we talked about a lot, the fact that Soligo's been a big carry for Dignitas in their wins. TSM looks better with Takeover, and both junglers are greener to the Academy scenes, so they might be able to throw down early and see who gets the best of each other in that mid-jungle duo.
And the last time that we saw Takeover in a matchup where, even though this is his counterpick situation, we just kind of want to alliterate to how good Takeover is, even when he's not necessarily winning lane, because he played up against 100 Thieves in Ryoma. He was playing Akali into a Lucian matchup where that matchup is just absolutely awful for the Akali. Went down 50 CS, still managed to pull off flanks when he found his mid-game power spike, had awesome assassinations in the backline as well. So even if there's a lot of attention put towards Takeover, it needs to be more than just one gank, boom, and then Soligo is, quote-unquote, done for the quota from Will. You got to, like, really take it to Takeover and get him shut down, because we've seen what Takeover can do even when he has a deficit in the early lane. And for TSM, we cannot also look away from this bottom lane, because when you're picking Kalista Nautilus, this lane is looking to kill.
Yeah, and Cody's son, notably, leading all of Academy in that creep difference at 10. It kind of shows you, A, how good Cody Sun's been playing, but B, how TSM really likes to play around that bot lane, tries to set them up for success. And this is all about the bot lane in this game. It's all about getting Cody Sun ahead, getting him comfortable, trying to attack a Ziggs, which is not easy to do, but TSM have a comp to do it, as they have teleports, they have a semi-global in the Rise. They can always come down and support bot lane with a Paranoia. And I very much expect this to be TSM trying to attack bot lane and Dignitas trying to attack the mid lane, get Soligo going. So I think that's going to be the difference in both comps, and I want to see what kind of action happens early around mid as both junglers are setting up. TSM are posturing for a late invade, but back off. It's going to be a mirrored start, both junglers starting on their red buffs.
Now, I like this, though. Will's going to get a solo leash start, as lanes are now emerging from both bottom lane and mid lane. It could give the indication, though, that with Soligo and Spawn and JJ's pathing, that Will did start on the red buff. But this allows both the mid lane and bottom lane to be able to fight for lane priority early, as if you were to give Kalista and Nautilus the early level 2, then it would be such a bad time for Spawn and JJ on this Ziggs and Thresh, because I imagine already that they have to be respectful of any of the early all-ins that Cody and Yurson can perform.
And Rafa, this start, I think it already tells me that it might be a 3-camp mid. I love the fact that Takeover, utilizing that priority, did utilize the trinket to check over on the Raptors, as Voldabear will be spotted. But Krugs is a camp that's oftentimes skipped in order to hit the crab timer. And the fact that both went for the Krugs tells me that they're going to path towards mid or through mid to get the other side of their jungle once they take the Raptors. But this is spotted from TSM. Takeover is shoved up, but does have knowledge of where the jungler's at. As we see Lore, though, really beating up on Haunter here in the top lane. Good
Yeah, normally in the past, people have taken Viego into the Lee Sin because you can get through the laning phase because of the sustain. But even though the lane sustain has been nerfed on Viego, it's surprising to see that Laurel is just getting the better of Haunter, as Lee Sin normally is able to win on the early part of the laning phase before Viego starts taking over thanks to the scaling factor. Now, Will has not opted in for an early gank into the mid lane, is just going for a standard full clear, and unfortunately, Cubby, we don't see any flexible, new paths. It's just standard stuff. Will's going to be hitting this top crab on this timer after the blue buff. Same thing for Hyper, respectively, on the bottom side of the map. But, both of the junglers are playing towards the strong lanes that are pushing in right now.
Yeah, I think that the ward for Will, it's what kind of distracted him, but is spotted going for this dive. Haunter trying to clear out the wave. Dignitas, they might still go for this. They're setting up for it.
They're looking for the stun from Will into the stun from Lorlo. Beautiful chain C. That's first blood for Dignitas.
Love how they waited out the flash and the safeguard from Haunter. Good patience coming out from the young jungler of Dignitas. As he hits that top lane timer, going to deny a wave and get the Viego ahead early. Important for Lorlo, who has struggled this season, is 9th in goal differential at 10 through the laning phase, but last week specifically had a couple really good games. The win that Dignitas had over CLG was all about setting up Lorlo in the top lane, and nice seeing Dignitas return to that in this one as they pull off a successful dive and get the Viego ahead early.
And check this out. I think Takeover had potentially was thinking about teleporting to the top lane, but because Soligo had already recalled and was waiting in base, TSM acknowledged the fact that had there been a teleport, it would have still been a 3v2 situation, and Takeover might have lost more than what he could have tried to gain back in advantage. So Takeover showing great patience and holding on to the teleport, maintains his teleport advantage over Soligo at the moment, as Soligo comes back into lane with a Dark Seal and a little bit of extra vision control. Hyper has mostly full cleared throughout his jungle. As Nocturne, you are just power farming to level 6, trying to get access to Paranoia. I imagine that once he does get access to that, we will start seeing plays mainly towards this bottom side of the map, where a lot of the priority has been given over to TSM.
But oddly enough, that play top actually helps your bot lane, right? Because now you have a TP advantage. So any play bot that TSM want to go for can be countered by more members of Dignitas if they overextend in the bot lane. And I want to see if they end up going for that. As Will clearing out his Raptors. You mentioned that Nocturne trying to speed to level 6 for Hyper. That does make a lot of sense. It's going to be a while, though, until that level 6 is hit. Still another minute or two, and this is another window for Will to potentially impact the map, and my eyes still look towards mid. If you trade Flash for Flash against Rise, that's a trade up, as you can attack that lane easily with the Silas in the future.
Ping's going out for the Dragon take. Both bottom lanes for TSM and Dignitas have respawned. Currently, Will and JJ are on a timer right now to potentially roam towards the top side of the map. further cement the lead against Hanser.
Skipping the camps.
Well, at this rate, they're just going to go for another dive. There's a huge wave stacking onto the top side of the map. TSM, no. Hanser, you better start running, buddy, because there's going to be a dive coming your way. Dragon will be signaled here against Dignitas, so they know that no Hyper cannot answer. But it looks like Hanser gives enough respect, backs off, is going to be able to dodge out on this dive.
Stops the base too. Good play from Hanser to deny some of that tempo. Going to prevent Thresh from getting back out onto the map and put Ziggs in a situation where he has to just wave clear. Hyper still doesn't have access to 6, but Takeover and Hyper are moving down, and once again, Spawn has to back off and respect this. Cannot approach the wave, is playing this intelligently. Good map play coming out from TSM in response. Is Dignitas, though, still looking for a trade.
As he used a Heartbreaker to get out of harm's way as Hanser just hit level 6, did not want to potentially play with the possibility that Hanser could have insected him back into the turret, as that would have been quite fatal. Had already taken a turret shot, would have been more than Lorlo wanted, but does push Hanser off. Still has the teleport advantage in case TSM want to push for play on this bottom half of the map, as Hyper is finally level 6. Paranoia is available. He's already going to use the priority from Takeover to potentially roam down into the jungle. Takeover also has Realm Warp, so you have a lot of global plays that are in your back pocket if you're TSM.
This invade just got spotted. Licorice, or Lorlo, I should say, is backing off, but will not pull the trigger on any TP. Instead, they're going to seed over the red buff. Good pathing coming out from Hyper, and TSM, they've gotten through the scarier part of the game going up against this Volibear. You now have a Nocturne with level 6. We're going to have Paranoias used, as TSM's done a good job of getting Nocturne to 6, also protecting Takeover mid, allowing him to play up, play aggro on the rise, and utilize that winning matchup that they drafted for themselves. Done a very nice job of protecting this pick against Soligo.
And the other thing about the Paranoia effect as well, you talked about teleport advantage and how true it is, because even if Lorlo does have a teleport to answer Takeover's teleport potentially, you can't use it in the midst when all the lights are being turned out, Cubby. You're going to have to wait until the 4 seconds does come up for that Paranoia blindness, as TSM, despite being a kill down against Dignitas, are not that far behind in terms of gold, only just a few hundred apiece. And with a composition like theirs, where the majority, their mid lane and their jungle do have a better scaling aspect, you know, it's okay to play the game slow. Yeah, you're really only concerned about Cody's son, quote-unquote, falling off in comparison to a Ziggs, but I imagine that within the next couple minutes before this dragon comes up, there will be a play made towards this bottom lane to get Cody's son ahead.
It looks like Cody's son actually might be rushing towards Wit's End early to try and protect himself from damage coming out from both Spawn and Soligo on the Ziggs and Silas respectively. But what I like here, as both teams are posturing around the Rift Herald, Spawn has TP, so he can join the fight if he needs to, and Rift Herald's so important for Ziggs comps, as it pretty much guarantees first brick, as we have a skirmish.
Yurson face checks, but he has Fate's Call from Cody's son to get out of harm's way. He's going to go back in. They're going to try to lock down Lorlo. He has the gold right now, but meanwhile, Takeover is teleported in. It's cut off by 4 members. Hanser is now coming in for the fight. Second fight comes out. Sonic Wave lands. The stun is down onto Yurson. He goes down. Lorlo is now going to get the reset. Looking for more members. Paranoid comes out. They're trying to lock down Will. It's only 2 members from Dignitas are going down, but Soligo's still alive on the backside. Hyper trying to do his best in the backline, but it's just going to be too hard for TSM as they're still trying to fight against the 3 members. Heartbreaker comes out. Nice flash from Takeover, barely dodging out as Lorlo looks for another one. TSM are going to get pushed off in the mid lane. I don't know if they're healthy enough to continue doing this Rift Herald.
We might just have this skirmish again, as both teams are resetting, backing off, but might be bouncing towards the objective, as the big difference in that fight, JJ, the death sentence, it found Cody's son in the backline. They were able to take out the Callista early, and the Mr. Steel Yule kit comp coming out with this Viego and Silas paying off for Dignitas. They were able to get that first kill, get Lorlo resets, and he's now sitting 3-0-1 on a Viego, a pick that scales very hard into the side lanes. And yes, TSM's done a good job of protecting Ryze, and Ryze can answer in the side lanes as the game goes on. But the fact that this Viego's ahead, any kills that TSM give up in a team fight will be punished heavily by Lorlo on the resets. As engaging on Nautilus, when you have Callisto, not the greatest, this whiffs, but the big part here is the turn. The exhaust lands on the Cody Sun. Takeover's TP puts him too close to the fight, and watch this death sentence from JJ. The Hail Mary, it finds Cody Sun in the back line, and that's what ends up turning the fight for Dig. Once they take over the Nautilus, they're just able to turn onto the Callista. There's a beautiful death sentence coming out from the support of Dignitas. And still a close fight thanks to how much damage Takeover was able to pump out. Played that very well, but was not enough for TSM to win skirmish.
And props to Lorlo, too. I mean, this guy, I thought he was about to die at least 2 or 3 times during this whole skirmish, but being able to use the Viego resets and the Heartbreaker as forms of mobility, nice flash as well, getting out of turret's range despite the insect from Hanser, keeps him alive. And now Lorlo is huge. He's 3-0-1. A kill on the Kalista means that Cody Sun's kind of dream to be accelerated in this early mid game has been stunted a little bit. So TSM, really, it's all now, the gold has been funneled mainly into Takeover and Hyper, who picked up a majority of the kills and assists in this last fight.
And they're going to trade Dragon here for a play as, oh, JJ almost guesses it. But they can use the Rift Herald to try and get 2 turrets here with the Ziggs. Very powerful, as the last patch they added more gold into the inner turrets in the side lanes. As, Saligo.
Okay, well, he took the Paranoia back, but the Fear comes out, and Takeover with the Realm Warp is not necessarily even needed. Gets 1 little chip damage in before Saligo falls, but the Rift Herald has taken the first brick against TSM. And so far, Dignitas, I have to say, Cubby, this is a nice opening so far.
They've been able to get gold on Lorlo. Very important on the Viego, but TSM actually played that last series of events rather well. They managed to find a pick on the Saligo. They crashed a wave mid as Dignitas overcommitted members to the top side. Now Dignitas are on the back foot once again. TSM has been taking place with Hyper. Oh, here comes the TP.
Collapse from Lorlo as well takes up Takeover's attention, meaning that Hyper has no way out, Takeover has no way out. The kill extension has been made. 6-3 now. The gold lead still only a solid 1,000 above for Dignitas, respectively. They don't have any dragons to compare it to TSM's, as we do have a Mountain Soul game, as Yurson might be caught out by Saligo here. Still has Paranoia and is available, as I don't think he used it when he was collapsed on by Hyper and Takeover just a couple minutes ago.
Yeah,
Cody-san and Yurson.
Yeah. Can't go for it with Kalista there. But a nice turn from Dignitas. We talked about the TP advantage. Hanser could have matched, but Takeover overextended. They knew that Takeover did not have flash from the last fight around the Rift Herald. So Dignitas properly punished that. Find 2 for themselves and reassert themselves in control of this game, and are now forcing TSM to burn TPs to just match tempo, as Hanser, using that TP, puts himself now in a position where TSM can't answer a play. If they would have had a TP advantage, Hanser gives that away to try and catch this wave, to try and rival the side lane push with no objectives up. Interesting decision coming out here from the top laner of TSM. As TSM finds himself at a 2k gold deficit as points are about to fall. We talked about the fact that both these teams average being about 800 gold down at 10 or at 15 as a squad, and the fact that Dignitas, we were kind of teasing like, hey, which team's going to step up their early game? It feels like Dignitas have, off the back of this Voldabear pick, Will's done a good job of getting them off the ground.
Yeah, since the very beginning, with that first dive, setting up Laurel, and now Laurel gets to do stuff like this.
Yes.
He has his Divine Sunderer very early on, same with Will's. So both of these picks are hitting their mid-game stride at the moment. Obviously, the Volibear won't have as much power the later the game goes on. You're just transitioning into an off-tank and a giant meat shield for the rest of your damage dealers. But Lorlo on this Viego, that is going to be super scary, because the tankier he gets, the more durable he gets, the harder it is to take him down, and then it's much more reliable to start getting these resets off, and you start taking a damage dealer like Takeover on this Riser, Cody-san, and the Kalista, and that's where you just start wreaking havoc in these skirmishes.
We do have a trade going on in the map. Dignitas still continuing to try and funnel gold into Lorlo, into the Viego. They realize that Viego's, with the Ziggs in a team fight, Viego has to be the brunt of the damage. And it's all about getting that upfront damage down to get Viego that first reset. Whereas TSM trying to weather the storm, trying to funnel more gold on the Takeover. The character that can answer both Viego and Silas in the side lane. TSM's doing a good job of prioritizing gold on the rise, and it has paid off for Takeover, who has a massive lead now over Saligo.
And you have to look back at Cody-san, who is kind of the one of the few early game bridges in this game. TSM did not get a chance to really play around Cody-san's advantage in the bottom side of the map. They didn't get a chance to snowball him because Spawn and JJ played relatively safe anytime there was pressure being allocated towards the bottom half of the map. And Cody-san is rushing a Wit's End. And while Wit's End does a decent amount of damage, it's not a shield mode rush, it's not a Kraken Slayer rush. So you're dealing less damage in for the sake of having more magic resist and not getting blown up early. So you have to wonder, how worth it is it going to be, especially if you're the one falling behind.
It is important into Viego comps, right? Because you want to try and deny that reset. And the Wit's End is a nice balance of defense and offense for the Kalista. So I do like the early item adaptation coming out from TSM, as both teams are resetting for this next Dragon. Mountain Soul on the Rift spawns in 40 seconds. This would be nice for both teams. Obviously, TSM especially as it puts them on Soul Point. I think this is where Dignitas want to opt into the team fight. And keep in mind, their comp's all about stealing your kit, right? So they want to... I think they're going to go for the depth charge, try and get a setup onto Rise. As Viego and Silas about using your own tools against you. It's really dark when you think about it that way, right?
Yeah, and this is the second time where we've seen a game and we didn't realize right away that, you know, between Viego and Silas, you can steal a whole champion's steal a whole champion's ability set between the ultimate for Soligo and then all the basic abilities for Lorlo.
Yeah, so because of the TP advantage, Soligo is crashing a very big wave into the turret as TSM, they trade out for bot pressure. But importantly, TSM did deny Ziggs getting into the river first, and now I love the fact Haunts are looking for flanks, trying to flank the Ziggs. This is how you can get around the front to back and survive the poke that this champion that has been very meta-defining on this patch can bring out, as Lorlo now has to shift over to Mark Haunter. Digger playing this though, Soligo has to go fast. There's a ward below.
Yeah. Well, Dignitas, as long as they were able to stall out time, you know, Soligo was just getting time onto the turret.
Yeah,
and
got it.
Oh my god, Dignitas stole away from a Callista? That is disaster. Takeover does manage to take down JJ, and they're looking for the fight re-engage. Will is going to have to bail out with the Stormbreaker. Now, can TSM take enough off the table of Dignitas? They got Lorlo down. Will is on the run, still low HP. Realm Warp with Takeover is able to follow up on the fight and take out Soligo. They lost out on the Dragon, but they do find 3.
Important that TSM wins that fight. They bridge the gold lead gap. And Dignitas, because they weren't able to get down the Ziggs poke, they don't fight at an advantage. And the fact that Cody-san, with the Wit's End, just goes untouched pretty much in that fight, able to pump out so much damage, turn things in their favor. And a front-to-back with Rise, who's very ahead for TSM at this point, even though they were at a gold deficit going into that fight. That's what turns it around for TSM. Now, Soul is denied. And we might be in for a long one here, Rafa, as approaching the 18-minute mark. We are even in gold. No one's at Soul Point. And taking a second look, the big turn is all the damage that Takeover is able to pump out as they one-shot JJ and fighting a front-to-back with Rise where him and Cody-san are not threatened at all. Easy fight for TSM to take.
Yeah, look at how much of the Ziggs damage is missing from Spawn here. You know, it doesn't get a couple of the bombs. The Mega Inferno Bomb barely hit a couple members on the outer rim, but no one in the center, so you don't get a majority of the damage going down. And as you said before, you know, Cody-san.
Untouched.
Untouched. And, of course, you know, Wit's End. I wasn't a believer of the first item rush, but when you're not getting hit by the skill shots, then, it works here. TSM now almost dead even with Dignitas at this point in the game. They still have the Dragon advantage. Turrets even across the board as well, as we're almost at the 20-minute mark. Baron will be spawning in a couple of minutes. And I imagine now TSM are still hitting a little bit of the stride now that Cody-san and Hyper are able to play around these objectives. It's just really important for Dignitas to be able to get these pokes down and to make the choke points really work in their favor.
And I think it's also important that Lorlo gets a better fight, right? This is the early setup for that fight. No health bars were chipped out by the Ziggs. He wasn't able to find those early resets. And once Haunter went down, they traded that out for Lorlo. Exactly what TSM needed to do in that situation. As TSM, they know that Lorlo is really strong. They're still matching with the Lee Sin. They're trying to make plays in the side lanes. As Soligo's under threat, but the paranoia. Oh no, they weren't able to find it.
No, the Soligo hit an Everfrost right on the entryway of Hyper and Takeover, so they were rooted in place. Hyper couldn't follow up with the paranoia right onto Soligo.
Call it off.
It was a nice setup from TSM, but a beautiful response from Soligo's, and now they're going to send in this Rift Herald with the Ziggs. They open up the mid lane turret for the taking, and this is going to give them better access into the jungle and start choking out the vision of TSM.
See Dignitas already using it to try and attack Monster in the side lane. And TSM, they feel good about this 1-3-1 setup. Because Soligo is so far behind, they feel like Haunter and Takeover can win both those side lanes. And as Soligo was going to fix mid, potentially hover because he didn't have TP, Takeover's going to take advantage of that. And there's going to be a trade of turrets. More gold being funneled onto the Rise. Whereas Ziggs, of course, taking those turrets so quickly with his kit. Going to be an even trade, but I think TSM, they want to funnel gold on the Takeover. They feel like this Rise is what can break the game. And so I feel like they're trading up with these trades.
I mean, when we go back to what we were talking about in this series, the mid laners are the focus for both of these teams, as Takeover, when he is on this roster, TSM, their play has been elevated. When Takeover is the one that is really just putting the game into his hands, and he is He is putting TSM into his knapsack and saying, all right, guys, come along for the ride. I got you. The further you can accelerate this rise to that late game fantasy, they've already completed 2 items. Working on this potentially death cap with this needlessly large rod, about another 2,100 gold to invest in. Once he's there, I mean, this rise is going to be pumping out some major damage here, Kobe.
We're going to have to see if TakeOver can do that soon, as this game, we have a tense one on our hands, Rafa. 4th Dragon about to spawn, both teams setting off. What I like from Dignitas, they're here early. They have mid-priority before TSM. This is a very different landscape going into this fight. The fact that Spawn is going to be able to set up in that river, chip out TSM as they walk in. As Ziggs playing very far up, trying his best to get priority to enable himself to be able to walk in the river. TSM don't want to break that, they go now.
I don't know how that Judge Light connected, but they connect with the Depth Charge as well. It answers back with the Paranoia, but they're going to have to use the Fate's Call to disengage the fight as the teleports came in from Saligo, ready to answer JJ with a flash play forward, forces Cody Sun's flash over the wall, making a Inferno Bomb right into the center, but TakeOver, beautiful stasis with that stopwatch is going to cancel out the damage here. Flashing backward, buys himself some space. Now TSM, they might be able to kite this one back, and Lorlo and the rest of the Dignitas don't have enough in the tank to be able to follow up on the fight. TSM now might go for the re-engage, Dredge Line onto JJ. It's going to pop the stopwatch. Jurson is going to have to flash back forward, and TSM finally find the support.
TSM are playing this fight so beautifully. The fact that TakeOver was able to survive with the stasis, flashes backwards, and you can see how tough it is for Dignitas to fight if they can't get a reset onto this Viego. TSM are playing to live, playing to kite it out, played that fight to perfection for what they needed, and now this will guarantee themselves soul point. Woo-hoo! Okay, a little close.
Okay.
We're good.
Did your heart jump, Covey? I know mine did.
Yeah, just a little. Yeah.
Considering last time they had the Callista Smite and they didn't get it and Will stole it away, I was like, oh no, is Spawn going to yoink it with this bomb again? But we have to see how this fight broke out.
TSM, they want to break the Ziggs poke, so they have to engage early. And this is where things got scary, because JJ, he full commits and he finds TakeOver with this death sentence. But the fact that there was no chain CC and the stasis gets off, it saves TakeOver, because look at all the damage that he dodged out on. Just perfect timing. They weren't quite able to chain it up. And because of this, he just flashes backwards, and now look at all the damage they're able to pump out. It's TSM. They split beautifully. They kite it out. They deny any resets from even being able to potentially land here for Dignitas, and that's why TSM win the fight so dominantly. Really well played fight from this Academy team.
Whew. I just want to catch my breath there. That was the skirmish before that was already intense, right? But then, you know, if you've noticed that there's only really been 2 full-blown out team fights so far, and the first time Dignitas got the better end of it because they were able to find Cody Sun so early, but this time around TSM being able to play around their flashes, but now take notice and take stock that with the Baron up, and next time a fight breaks out, Cody Sun, no flash, TakeOver, no flash. These are the major damage dealers that Dignitas have to find and get a reset down. There's also no stopwatch available anymore for TakeOver, as he had to sell it to make room for his other large rod. Now adding a little bit of extra ability power.
Asserting dominance.
Yeah, asserting dominance, baby. Hey, you're not giving up that Dark Seal either. You know, you started investing. You gotta make the bank now with those stacks. So, but this does signal to Dignitas that if you're able to find a flank, if you're able to find a pick on any of these 2 major damage dealers in the backline, that is going to be lights out for TSM.
I love that you bring that up, because look at what TSM's doing right now in the top lane. They have hyper hovering TakeOver, and because TakeOver doesn't have flash, he's scared to even show his face on that wave. They had the Nautilus early. TSM, they understand, hey, Ryze doesn't have flash. The only way Dignitas can come back is if they get a shutdown onto this Ryze. We're going to do our best to protect him in the side lane. I love that TakeOver respecting the plays that Dignitas could make. It forces Dignitas to reset early, as they will now be trying to worry about this next Mountain Dragon, given the fact that this is going to be Soul for TSM. And I feel that both teams, because they are opting more for the 1-3-1 strategy, should not have any Baron being started soon. And one of the downsides of what Dignitas has is that you can't really start Baron with Ziggs because you're lower damage, and then you can't start Baron against Ziggs because the magic damage debuff. It turns that Super Mega Inferno Bomb into a Inferno Nuke, as it does a lot of damage if you're doing the Baron.
So we take a moment to breathe here. Just want to give a huge shout out to our production staff here at NSG for doing all that they can. Also special words to Sam Price, one of our observers. As you saw a little picture-in-picture, there's something that you might keep out for the rest of the keep an eye out for the rest of the day, is what we call Sam Price's nature trails and observers. You know, you might see some cute animals in the log of war as we get a nice Beautiful.
We're at that point of the game. It feels like an LCK game at the moment. You know, we're in the
well, things have stalled out because TSM
state.
and Dignitas, they're taking their time. I think for TSM, they're waiting on flash timers at the moment as Takeover's flash is now back up. They're being careful about which fights to take. They're just pushing out side lanes. They're just exchanging tempo control on the bottom and the top side of the map.
This is such a it's so fun to watch both teams trying to attack this pick as Takeover just got his flash back up. But Dignitas, once again, they were trying to set up for it. TSM understands the only way Dig can come back is taking down Ryze in the side lane, the pick that beats both side laners that Dignitas has. As Haunter doing his best on the opposite side of the map to keep up. Going into the Dragon, 1 minute out. Once again, can Dig get into the river early, and can Ziggs actually get reasonable poke down to make a difference in HP bars before TSM pull off that all-in? And can TSM continue to keep all their members alive? I feel like that's been the critical part of these fights, Ralph, the fact that no one on TSM's dropping and getting over resets to Lorlo.
Both flashes are now also available for Takeover and Cody's son. TSM being patient, waiting out for the next objective, making sure that they did not partake in any unnecessary skirmishes. They're going to have Summoner's advantages. Look at this also. Recent item completions. Blood Shield or Immortal Shield build for Cody's son. Death Cap for Takeover.
Yeah, it's a big rise. And he has flash, importantly, for this next fight. But Dignitas, they had to be here first with the Ziggs. They're at least giving themselves a chance to potentially land some poke. I want to see Spawn just clear this wave and then walk into that bot. Oh my god!
Your son catches Spawn in the middle of the dark passage. What a shutdown from TSM! And that's the bomb Inferno Specialist already taken out of the game. Dignitas, without Spawn, it's really just up to Soligo, but they find the other damage dealer as well. Without the burst, who does Lorlo get to have a reset on easily? And this should be Mountain Soul going over to TSM.
That's it. Your son just ended the game with that dredge line on the Lantern, calls it perfect. Take Spawn on a trip to the gray screen himself on the Nautilus, and that will be Mountain Soul going over to TSM. You can see the pings on Baron, even using the Ryze ult to quickly rotate over. Haunter, he's being left in the dust, but that's fine. He can catch up with the safeguards. As your son, what a play coming out of the support at TSM Academy.
We had spoken with Immortals Academy coach Jensen Go, who talked to us about when TSM were waiting on your son to come into the TSM Academy roster back in spring and saying, hey, you know, this is doing a decent job. You know, is your son really that good? And he told us, oh, dude, he's insane. And we get to see why. Right in that moment. Just watch this again.
For such a tense game, it ends here. I mean, once Ziggs gets dredge line and combo, that's the game. That's Mountain Soul, that's Baron. TSM should be able to wrap this one up. And for so many close decisions, close trades around the map, for it to end off a dredge line like that, holy smokes, your son. Give that man the Player of the Game award as we wrap this one up. We're going to have to see if TSM can put the finishing touches on this one and play it out clean. As Dignitas Academy, I feel like one of the big differences in this one, Rafa, they were never able to flank to get a kill onto this Ryze, a difficult character to flank with the Rune Prison. And the fact that resets haven't been able to come in for this Viego, it's just crippling Dignitas, on top of the fact that Yursan just crippled Dignitas with one dredge line, landing onto Ziggs, ending the fight before it was even able to start. Now TSM, the full court press is on. They have Baron. We're going to have to see what they do with this power play.
You have teleport advantage as well for all TSM. Respectively, Dignitas have teleports to answer back as well, but their concern is more about answering the Baron up waves that are pouring into their base as they finally unlock the mid-tier 1 turret. And with Mountain Soul on their hand, it's not necessarily about the resistances that we care about for a team that is mostly bruisers and damage dealers for TSM, but it's mostly about that extra health shield, because that negates a lot of the burst that is coming in from Dignitas, relying on getting those resets easily accessible for Lorlo. If that doesn't come in, then Dignitas' core squad comp. Oh, Lorlo's trying to force something. They get the flash advantage out of TSM.
Oh boy.
But now Lorlo has got nowhere to go. They're stacking right on top of the Dark Passage, and Lorlo cannot get out alive. Hyper's still in the thick of it all, but has the stopwatch to buy himself some time. Stormbreaker comes out from Will as a response. They're able to take down Hyper, but there's no resets because Lorlo is gone. Takeover forces the stopwatch out of Soligo, and the Zonia's Hourglass and the Stasis will be able to get himself out alive and safely, but TSM still finds another one onto Will in the response. Spawn's still dealing some damage now. This time he's not getting focused. Dredge line goes wide. Death Charge comes out as an answer from Soligo, trying to make it out, but TSM are able to deal with Soligo, and now they're on the full chase. Haunter burning the flash out of JJ. They got the inhibitor. Do they end the game right here, Kobe?
Haunter doesn't have TP, so we can't back at a full health bar. I think they're just going to go for as many inhibitors and structures as they can. Props to Spawn, who was able to find Takeover on the back half of that fight. Only reason that this is interesting is because Takeover was taken down. And TSM are going to have to respect the fact they lost a couple members in that skirmish. Well played from Dignitas. Special shout out to Will using that stopwatch to buy a lot of time and space and dig. They realize this might be the best chance. Though he TP'd at the top side, but TSM, they're retreating through the bot jungle, and I don't know if Dignitas can catch them.
Get the recall timers out. Cody Sun is able to make it the first one out. This is like playing Left 4 Dead 2 now.
Yeah.
Cody Sun made it onto the truck. Can your son and Hanser find the way out from the zombie that is Lorlo? He's still on the chase. Paranoid comes out, tries to buy some time with the vision denial, and looks like your son and Hanser will be able to make it out alive.
At least for Dignitas, they bought enough time for the Elder Dragon to respawn, but that first Baron for TSM, 6k gold lead now on the Rift, and so many more items coming in. You have completed Zanya's for Takeover, who that stasis now having at every fight going to be important. Also, Cody-san, 4 items and a stopwatch for this Elder fight. I don't know if Dignitas can overcome the Mountain Soul, overcome the power that TSM now have in their kit, as it was a nice try here. The fact that Lorlo gets taken down first, everyone was dogpiling in on the Lantern. But from here, the 4v5, we get to see the power of Ziggs. If you overextend, if you come into this champion, it's very difficult. And Spawn plays this fight very well, forces Takeover's flash. With that, the stopwatch from Saligo also preventing the combo from going through. And now the satchel charge, just beautiful from Spawn. Chains it with the bouncing bomb, knocks him into the turret, and those 2 tower shots are what takes down Takeover. As that's the only reason this game is still going on, and Dignitas have a chance to look at this Elder Dragon, Rafa.
Elder Dragon is now the new win con for Dignitas, because playing against the Mountain Soul... Yeah, well... Hey, man. New win con, only win con now. TSM still doing major structure damage despite not being the team with the Ziggs on their squad. They take down this tier 2 turret on the bottom side of the map. The open inhibitor in mid lane, it gives them a free pushing lane of super minions that Hanser is helping barrel down into the base of Dignitas. 55 seconds on the Elder Dragon. Watch for the vision control in this bottom quadrant of the jungle, because that is what is going to be the key for TSM to help deny a free entrance into the Elder Dragon pit. As the Dredge line connects onto Lorlo, he's popping the stopwatch already. Will be able to buy some time. I think it doesn't cancel out the depth charge right yet, but they're still going in. Oh my goodness, Hyper is right into the back line. Hanser's also found the back line. He's going to force Spawn's hand and forcing him to flash away. Whale is on the retreat. Lorlo's on the retreat. And TSM have already eliminated 2 members from Dignitas. All 5 members strong. Mega Infernal Bomb doesn't take out anyone. Takeover still has teleport, so he can recall and just come back in, making this push available.
All those 3 members stacked up for Dignitas going up against Rise at this point. It's too much. Takeover takes him down, rips through those health bars, and now they're going to wait until the creeps crash. Never mind, he wants to send the TP now. 5v3, they're going for the game. Can Spawn stall this up?
Will doesn't have Stormbreaker. Spawn is running low on mana, so he's going to have to take a trip back to the Fountain, but there's no time to take a trip back to the Fountain because TSM are knocking on the doors of the Nexus. 1 turret is already gone. They're playing around the super minion waves. They're going to look to find Will. Hanser goes in with the Sonic Wave and the Resonate Strike. Kick back on the Spawn, gets a knock-up, forces back into the Fountain. And it's just an open season, baby, for TSM to take game 1 of the series.
Oh, Takeover by the end of the game. You could see why TSM were funneling the Rise the way they were, giving him so much safety and protection as he was shoving up in those side lanes, because he made it pay off. The full build, Rise past level 16. People forget about how much damage this champion does if you allow him to fight, and Takeover able to position himself to take down Dignitas in that game, be the big difference maker in the later stages, and going up against Saligo, one of the best Academy mid laners that we have. A statement game from Takeover and TSM, who you mentioned, Rafa. You feel like this team can push for top 6. They have to take care of Dignitas Academy if they want to prove that. They did so in game 1.
The goal for TSM is to get a 2-0 in this series, because for them
really
being in the 7th spot...
You're telling me that these teams want a 2-0?
Well,
wow.
Okay. All right. Thanks,
Wise
Kobe.
words.
You don't need to be to me, man. You know, but in all seriousness, as we've been stating before, TSM need to make that push for top 6, and in the 7th spot, every game is just as important. Whereas we stated before, you know, Dignitas, they are just trying to play for experience and get Will accommodate as much as possible, because it doesn't seem likely that they're going to be able to make that same break and push, because right now, when you're looking at the standings for Academy, you have 100 Thieves and FlyQuest currently dominating, and with their current Academy roster playing in the LCS because they've been playing so well, and you have the new LCS roster playing who are just as good of a team in the Academy's lineup, we imagine that those two spots will still be at the same. You have Cloud9 and Team Liquid who are playing later today for the 3rd and 4th spot respectively, and then I believe it's Evil Geniuses and Golden Guardians who have now kind of occupied the 5th and 6th slots, if I'm not mistaken. Or Immortals, that's right.
Yeah.
So that is a tough,
Immortals.
that is a really tough group of 6 to play through, but with TSM and Takeover in the lineup, it is definitely possible. As ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be taking a quick break as we get ready for Game 2 of the series. Don't go away. We'll be right back.